Hello, and welcome to Instant Insights, Global Data's strategic intelligence podcast. At Global Data Strategic Intelligence, we track over 100 tech, industry, ESG, and macro themes impacting all major sectors. I'm Stu Robarts, and on today's episode, we're discussing the recent spate of cyber attacks on retailers in the UK. Major brands like Marks and Spencer's, Co-op, and Harrods have been targeted, with customer data stolen, operations impacted, and hundreds of millions of pounds lost. As authorities, including the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, seek to identify the attackers and those targeted try to recover, we look at the current threat landscape and what it means for businesses. My guest is Charlotte Wilson, Head of Enterprise Sales at Checkpoint Software. Checkpoint is a highly regarded cybersecurity firm that is well known for its research and in particular its annual State of Cybersecurity reports. Charlotte, thanks for joining us. To begin with, what is Checkpoint's understanding of these recent cyber attacks and what is your take on it?
So they're obviously very public attacks because consumers can clearly see empty shelves and problems with returning goods. So they're very public. From what we understand, they are financially motivated attacks. So they are largely ransomware. And it is ransomware as a service that's being used. So we think it's being used by a group called Scattered Spider, but we think they are leveraging a ransomware as a service from a company or an organization called Dragon Force. And so we know that Scattered Spider are English speaking and potentially younger generation, and hence being able to adapt to the technology used quite quickly. Originally, we think they were intended for large US retailers because they are ransomware, so that would gain the most financial output. But they seem to have affected the UK retailers, and so therefore they're making their way through the UK retailers.
And you mentioned the Dragon Force ransomware platform that was being linked to these attacks, and it was suggested that it was being used by this group. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and how it works and perhaps how people can protect themselves against such attacks?
Yeah, so I suppose separating those two things. First thing is Dragon Force has got ransomware as a service. So there'll be operators that design the ransomware attacks and the malware. And then there are affiliates that will go and use those and exploit it and hold people to ransom. And they sometimes have a shared, like a profit share model. So it's a profitable way of doing cybercrime. What can the retailers do about it is therefore another thing. If you look at the nature of the retail market, they've got hundreds and hundreds of suppliers of various different sizes and degrees, and a very open network that includes operational technology like heating, lighting, fridges, all of those sort of systems, which we would call OT technology. And then they've got IT, they've got cloud, they've got on-premise, they've got edge, and they've got AI. So they have one of the most complex supply chains to service and support and maintain. So one clear thing they can do is monitor the third-party access to their networks. And one challenge that retailers have that is unique is that some of the suppliers to them might be quite small and so may not hold the same level of security in their organization as maybe the retailer is.
And why is it you think retailers in particular, and to be fair, some of their suppliers in their supply chain are being targeted?
I think the retailers have an incredibly hard job because they're dealing with so many different suppliers of varying degrees. The networks are dynamic. They have lots of things attached to them. So I think they have a really complex job. And from a hacker's perspective, the least path of resistance is the one they'll choose. If you've got lots of things that you have to maintain, you have to make sure are patched, secured, and controlled across many different interfaces, it's much easier for you to have something that isn't as up-to-date as it should be or isn't as protected as it could be. They're much more susceptible to mistakes. Segmenting off their network will help them reduce the impact zone. And so that's something obviously that we would be talking to with all retailers and actually supply chains, but they have just a really hard job. because they're dealing with financial data and personal data and then supply chain information. They just have an awful lot more at their fingertips to have to control and to maintain.
And so for supermarkets or retailers and other businesses, one of the key things I guess you have to think about is what the attack surface is, how big the attack surface is, and where attacks might come in from.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you think from a retailer's perspective, they have things like even down to scanning your items. So as a person, you go and buy the products in the shop, you get to the till and you scan them, and they're using an element of AI. So they're using an AI to check that that is what it says it is. That AI is typically going to be on a data center at the edge, so they've got to protect that. They might have some elements of their supply chain that's in the cloud. They've got to protect that. They've got some elements of financial data that might be secured by another body. They've got to protect that. They've got people turning up and doing deliveries and supplying, and all of those things. They've got to protect every bit of that. And one of the challenges with looking at that from a security perspective, some of that sits with the security team and some sits with the networking team, and they've just got a lot to do. So when we talk about vulnerabilities and patches, so CVE or a common vulnerability exploit, which just means it's something that needs to be patched because it could be a problem, that quite often will come from into a SOC as a known thing to go and do, thrown to an IT team to go and fix, but that IT team may not understand the vulnerability from a security perspective. So it may not get quickly patched, or it may not have a patch for it immediately, and therefore some activity needs to happen that the security team needs to control. So I think it's just the volume of what they have to deal with is challenging, and it's easy to underestimate the task.
Just following on from that, it was suggested to me not so long ago in another interview that cyber attack approaches aren't really changing in terms of what they are or the form they take. They're just getting much more targeted. Is that something that you guys would that would resonate with you guys, or would you kind of differ on that slightly?
No, I think that's fair. I think they're getting far more advanced and highly personalized because of AI. So if you take this retail attack, say any of the retailers right now, the primary attack is to get the money from the retailer to free up access back to their information. And that's the ransomware itself for the company, the retailer, to pay or negotiate. The secondary attack is all that information that has been gathered can then be sold to other people that then might do a secondary activity with it. And that's where some of the sophistication comes in. That's where social engineering comes in. So that's the likes of Stu. This is a personalized offer to you from a retailer. Click here, and might send you to another domain. You may still think you're clicking on that retailer, but you actually might be sent somewhere else, and someone might be downloading things on your device or taking more credentials from you or exploiting you in some way. So I think that's where the sophistication comes, is that there's the first attack, which is to the retailer, the secondary attack, which is to the you and me, the mums and dads, brothers and sisters, the consumer. And AI is making them something you're more likely to click on because they're much more personalized. So it could be so much as, Stu, I see that you bought this in the last time that you visited our store. We hope that was great for you. Here's some personalized offers for you based on what you like to shop for. And if I've got access to you as a loyalty scheme customer, I probably know quite a bit about you. And I think that's the nature. They've just become so much more advanced. And then you can like roll ahead and look at what's happening with deep fake. I mean, we start to get into a world where even the video of you and I might not even be real. It starts to get pretty scary. So you can sort of see why we in the defense side of the business have to be really on top of it and use the tools that the people on the attacking side of the business are using. We have to be advanced at using them.
Yeah, it's all quite a lot to get your head around, really.
Yes.
Um, just taking a broader view of things and perhaps drawing on Checkpoint's own kind of tools and resources. How do you guys view how the broader threat landscape is evolving?
So we're seeing more threats than we used to. Interestingly, retail isn't one of the most hacked industries in our research. So we have a very extensive research facility, and we also have just invested in a mass AI research facility as well. So we're really driving that agenda. So we have a lot of data that we can do things with. And what we try and do is package it up as simply as possible for the customers that are in that vertical, to give them as much information as we humanly can to try and help them. We also have external risk management, so we can see what is seen from them from the outside, not just from inside their networks. Interestingly, retail is the 5th most hacked industry. It's way, way behind education, government, and healthcare. So it's actually not the biggest attack. We think they're dealing with about 300 attacks per week, which it starts to get into the thousands when you start to get into the other industries. However, it's obviously, once you're in, you can hold to ransom at a higher rate because it's so much more public. And you can see just the press at the moment is reporting the retail hacks pretty much every other day. So what we try and do is give the information to the customers we can. We've got external information we can feed to them to say, these are areas we think you could be vulnerable and we can help protect you. We use AI. We have in Threat Cloud, which is our AI engine, we have about 56 engines at the moment that are AI-driven engines to do predictability and help you. And then we partner really well. So we take my CEO would talk to you about an open garden approach. And what he really means is we're really good at what we're good at. And where we're not really good, we partner really well. And we do integrated partnerships. So that's how we approach it.
Yeah. And just to pick up on something you said there, you mentioned some of the other industries that are being very highly attacked. Do you find that the threat profile changes from industry to industry? There are different types of attacks or different motivations for attacks from industry to industry?
So industry to industry, yes, I would gather that there are different motivations. So some are political, some are non-political. I think the retail hacks don't appear to be political. They appear to be cybercrime for financial reasons. But the fact that it's a ransomware as a service, and there does lead it to see that it could be a bit more chancing as opposed to targeted. Now, I could be completely wrong on that front, but just the nature of the way in which people communicate makes us think that this is a younger group of individuals. And we know that the National Crime Agency has started to point to younger people that are IT savvy, seeing potentially a route this way. And I think that's up to us to try and navigate younger, skilled, technically native people towards coming and joining the good forces like ourselves.
And just finally, are we at a point where businesses should be approaching cybersecurity any differently? Is this a kind of milestone moment, if you like, or is it simply the case that businesses should be doing what they've been doing and just being as thorough as they possibly can?
So I think there is a need for us to train people well on social engineering. So within the help desks and within, which I think is part of the retail hacks, is within the help desk, to teach them to maybe be aware of social engineering techniques. I think there is a need to teach consumers to protect their data far better. I mean, when you and I go into a shop giving over our email address so we can get a receipt, maybe we just shouldn't do this so often as we have been in the last few years. Maybe we need to be a bit more cautious. I definitely think there is a need. If you've got a wide supply chain, you should be monitoring your supply chain. If you are a retailer today, you're not necessarily in the bucket of critical national infrastructure. So some parts are distribution that could stop the supply of food in the UK would be, but the retailer itself may not be. Which means that if one of them gets hacked, they don't actually have to tell their supply chain. And so they could be impacting each other without realizing. Equally, they don't necessarily have to tell you and I, unless our data's been taken in a way that will impact us. I think M&S did a very good job actually of early out the doors telling their consumers and making them fully aware of what happened. I think they did a good job of handling that as a difficult situation to handle. And it did mean that then as a consumer, you could be more aware if you got an email or an offer of some sort that maybe it wasn't going to be authentic. A lot of people don't actually have to tell you if they don't think you're impacted. So you might be clicking on things and you just don't know. I do think that there is maybe a need for us to consider how we would put regulation in place to ensure that there is a better sharing of information around this. I think it's very complex to do, but I do think we could help each other. And then finally, I just think the CVE part is never really gets taken all that seriously. I mean, that bit for me is a big thing. If it's being handled by your IT team as opposed to your security team, I think it's important that the security team stress the need for those certain CVEs that are critical to get patched and sorted, or to put those people outside of a blast zone.
I think those are two really good points to finish on. Thanks so much, Charlotte. It's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you.
Lovely to talk to you too.
Thanks to Charlotte for joining us, and thanks to you all for listening. Until next time, from all of us at Global Data Strategic Intelligence, this has been Instant Insights.